So this video lesson is just a quick review of the process of adding with negative integers. We're not going to do a full explanation of it. We'll just review it quickly, and then there are 12 practice problems at the end for you to work through. So remember that addition can be thought of as leaps on a number line. So if our two addends, for example, let's say we have 15 plus 25, if our two addends are both positive, then they are moving in the same direction away from 0. So their overall distance from 0 is getting larger and larger and larger. That helps us find out what the absolute value of our sum is going to be, because there are two things we need every time we take the sum. We need the absolute value of the sum, and we need the sign. So two positive numbers, you're just going to add as you normally would. And this should be familiar because we have been working with this since at least second or possibly even first grade when you started learning about addition. So now if we take that and extend that idea to two negative numbers also, although this number line isn't going to do it exactly right. If we have negative 15 plus negative 25, their movement on the number line is also going in the same direction away from 0. So their overall distance away from 0 is going to continue to increase, even though it will be negative. So much like the addition of only positive addends, the addition of only negative addends, you add their absolute values, you get the total distance from 0, and then we slap a negative sign on. Because both addends are negative, so you shouldn't be able to add negative numbers to get a positive. Now the last case that we have is adding positive and negative numbers together. So let's say we have 15 plus negative 25. In this case, we start at 15. We go backwards on our second movement with negative 25 to the other end of 0. And so this sum ends up being negative because one of our addends, the negative 25, is larger than the other, which is 15. And as you can tell, and I'll give you another example here too, with a 25 plus negative 15, since the distance from 0 is being pulled as if it were a tug of war. The negative addend wants to pull in the negative direction, and the positive addend wants to move in the positive direction. The total distance from 0 will cancel themselves out in a kind of way. So the absolute value of our sum, the number part of it and not the sign, is just the difference between the two numbers that we're adding together, between our two addends. So for 15 and 25, there's a difference of 10. But whether that's a positive 10 or a negative 10 determined entirely by the larger, or the addend rather, with a larger absolute value. So in the case of negative 25 plus 15, negative 25 is larger. So it becomes a negative 10, and in the other case, a 25 plus negative 15, it is a positive 10 because the 25 is actually larger. So that brings down the few rules that we learned about in the video lesson in class. When you're adding integers with unlike signs, you subtract their absolute values, and the sum has the sign as the addend with a larger absolute value. And when you're adding numbers, any sorts of numbers, not just integers, but any sorts of numbers with like signs, you just add the absolute values, and the sum has the same sign as the addend. So now we're going to get into those practice problems. There are 3 pages, each with 4. So go ahead and pause the video here, work through these practice problems, come back when you're ready to go on with them, and we will go through the answers and then move on to the next set of questions. So let's start with the first one, 47 plus negative 63. They have different signs. Since they have different signs, we're going to take 63 minus 47, find the distance of their absolute values. That becomes 16. Negative 63 is larger, so the whole sum is negative, negative 16. Next, for negative 18 plus 22, they have the same sign. So they're both moving in the negative direction away from 0. 22 plus 18 is 40. Of course, both of these integers are negative, so the overall sum must also be negative to be negative 40. For the third one, we have 18 plus 54. This is just our standard positive number addition that we're familiar with, but of course that works that way because they have the same sign. 18 plus 54, we have the overall answer of 72, positive, because both 18 and 54 are positive, so the sum must be positive. And finally, negative 40 plus 70, the numbers have different signs. So 70 minus 40 is 30. 70 has the larger absolute value, and since 70 is positive, our sum must be positive 30. Moving on to the next set of questions, we have these 4. Go ahead and pause the video, work through these 4, and come back when you are ready to go through the answers, and then on to the last 4 addition problems. Well, in number 1, or rather number 5, but the first one here, we have negative 13 plus 16. These are numbers with different signs. So we're going to subtract their absolute value. 16 minus 13 is 3. And then 16 has the larger of the 2 absolute values, so it is a positive 3, as the movement in the positive direction is more than the movement in the negative direction. For the second one, we have the same sign. Addition with positive addends, that's familiar for us. 42 plus 21 is 63, and of course both addends are positive, so your sum is also positive, 63. For negative 22 plus negative 35, again, we have the same sign, even though they're both negative. So the overall distance away from 0 will be the sum of those 2 distances, or absolute values. That adds up to 57. Of course, both negative 22 and negative 35 are negative, so the sum is negative, negative 57. And finally, for negative 50 plus 9, we have a different sign here. So 50 minus 9 is 41, but 50 has a larger absolute value, so the overall sum is negative. So the sum is negative 41. Finally, the last 4 problems, extending the idea a bit more to multiple addends. Pause the video, and then come back when you are ready to move on. So in the first one, we have 135 plus negative 24. They have different signs. 135 minus 24 gives us 111. The positive number, the 135, has a larger absolute value, so it is a positive 111. For the second one, we can just go from left to right, or we can add the numbers that are positive and the numbers that are negative. In this case, let's add the numbers that are positive and negative, because of course addition is commutative. So 15 plus 5 is 20. Negative 10 plus negative 20 is negative 30, as they're the same signs. And 20 plus negative 30, they have different signs, so 30 minus 20 is 10. But 30 has a larger absolute value, so it is negative 10. For the next one, let's add straight from left to right. Negative 15 plus negative 14, having the same signs, moving in the same direction away from 0, so 15 plus 14 is 29, but that's a negative 29. And now negative 29 plus negative 13 also have the same signs. 29 plus 13 is 42. But of course it is a negative 42 because all of the addends here are negative. And finally, for the last one, we can see we can actually make this a little bit easier on ourselves by using commutative and associative properties. 4 plus negative 4 is 0. 7 plus negative 7 is 0. So really the only thing we have left is the negative 12. And so that is our sum. As a quick review, when you add numbers with like or unlike signs, if they have like signs, you add their absolute values. They're moving in the same direction away from 0, so the overall distance from 0 increases. And if you're adding integers with unlike signs, or decimals or fractions or anything with unlike signs, then you're going to subtract the absolute values, and the sum has the same sign as the addend with the larger absolute values.